I stood in the parking lot of a children's soccer game, watching my husband cheer for a little girl who wasn't our daughter, his arm wrapped around a woman who wasn't me, and in that moment, I realized, for 15 years I had been living half a life while he lived two complete ones. My name is Victoria Morrison. I'm a senior partner at one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms, and this is the story of how I destroyed the man who thought he could fool me. But before I tell you what I did to him, you need to understand that what happened next wasn't just revenge, it was justice. And if you think you know how this ends, you don't. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you think about trust, marriage, and the masks people wear forever. And before we dive into this story, if you love real-life drama, devastating revenge tales, and true stories that prove reality is stranger than fiction, hit that subscribe button right now, because you'll want to be here for every story I share. Trust me. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My story begins in the spring of 2008 in a small coffee shop in Boston where I was finishing my final year of law school. I was 26 years old, exhausted from studying for the bar exam, and completely unprepared for the moment when Marcus Wellington walked into my life. He was different from the other men I'd dated. Where they were aggressive and competitive, Marcus was gentle, thoughtful. He worked as a consultant for a mid-sized tech firm, nothing flashy but stable. When he asked me out, his hands actually trembled slightly. I found it endearing. Our courtship was traditional, I suppose you'd say. Dinners at modest restaurants, long walks through Boston Common, conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. He told me about his childhood in Chicago, how his parents had divorced when he was young, how he'd promised himself he'd never put his own children through that pain. I believed every word. We married in 2009, a small ceremony with close friends and family. I'd just accepted a position at Harriman & Locke, a prestigious corporate law firm in Manhattan. Marcus had secured a consulting role with a mid-sized tech startup in the city. We moved into a modest two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Life was good, comfortable, safe. The first few years of our marriage were exactly what I'd hoped for. We both worked long hours, building our careers. I made junior partner by 2012. Marcus's consulting business was thriving. He'd tell me about his clients, about traveling to various cities for projects, Boston, Philadelphia, sometimes Chicago, visiting his father who still lived there. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed, the patterns I should have questioned. He traveled every other week, sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a time, always to the same cities, always with vague descriptions of client meetings and project deadlines. When I'd ask for details, he'd give me just enough information to seem transparent, but never quite enough to verify. His phone was always face down, always on silent. He'd excuse himself to take calls in the other room, saying it was boring work stuff he didn't want to burden me with. There were entire weekends when he'd claim to be at conferences or team-building retreats. He'd send me a few text messages, maybe a quick phone call, but never video chats. "The connection is terrible here," he'd say, or "I'm so exhausted, I just want to crash." I didn't question it. Why would I? I was a corporate lawyer working 80-hour weeks, desperate to make senior partner. I understood demanding careers. I understood sacrifice. And Marcus, he was so supportive of my ambitions. He cooked dinner when I worked late. He never complained about my schedule. He encouraged me to chase my dreams. What I didn't know was that while I was chasing my dreams in Manhattan, Marcus was living an entirely different life in Philadelphia. By 2015, I'd made senior partner. At 33 years old, I was one of the youngest senior partners in the firm's history. My focus was mergers and acquisitions, corporate litigation, the kind of work that required absolute precision and the ability to see patterns others missed. Marcus seemed genuinely proud of me. He threw me a surprise party at our apartment, invited colleagues and friends, gave a touching speech about how lucky he was to be married to such an incredible woman. I remember that night so vividly. I remember looking at him across our crowded living room, catching his eye, and feeling this surge of gratitude. I had the career I'd always wanted, and a husband who supported me unconditionally. That was the lie I told myself. The truth was, Marcus didn't just support my career because he loved me. He supported it because my obsessive work schedule gave him the perfect cover for his double life. The years between 2015 and 2023 passed in a blur of cases, courtrooms, and victories. I was unstoppable in the boardroom. At home, Marcus and I had settled into a comfortable routine. We'd discussed having children several times, but I kept putting it off. My career was at a critical juncture. There would be time for kids later, I told myself. Marcus never pushed the issue. Now I know why. He already had children. April 14th, 2023. That's the date my entire world collapsed. It started with something so mundane, so ordinary, that I almost didn't pursue it. I was preparing for a massive merger case, one that would involve extensive due diligence on a Philadelphia-based corporation. My firm had hired a private investigation agency to do background checks on the company's executives. During a meeting with the lead investigator, Frank Morrison, I mentioned that my husband did consulting work in Philadelphia occasionally. Frank asked what firm Marcus worked for. I told him. Frank made a note, said he'd check if there were any connections to our case. 3 days later, Frank called me into a private meeting. His face was strange, careful, like he was handling explosives. "Victoria," he said slowly, "I need to show you something, and I need you to stay calm." He placed a folder on the table between us, thin, maybe 10 pages inside. I opened the folder. The first page was a property deed, a house in a Philadelphia suburb called Bryn Mawr, purchased in 2011. The owners listed were Marcus Wellington and Jennifer Hartley. I stared at the names. Marcus Wellington, my husband, Jennifer Hartley, a stranger. Who is Jennifer Hartley? My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. Frank pulled out another document, a birth certificate. Emma Grace Wellington, born 2012. Parents, Marcus Wellington and Jennifer Hartley. Then another, Sophia Rose Wellington, born 2015. Same parents. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, but I forced myself to focus. How did you find this? Cross-referencing property records with family court documents. Your husband has been paying child support through the Philadelphia family court system since 2016. Before that, he was making direct payments that Jennifer documented in a custody agreement filed with the state. Custody agreement? They were never married, but they filed for joint custody of their children. It's all legal, all documented. Victoria, he has an entire family in Philadelphia, a house, 2 daughters. He's been living this double life for over a decade. I sat there in that conference room, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, and felt nothing, absolutely nothing. The shock was so profound that my emotions simply shut down. Frank continued talking. "There's more. I pulled his credit report. He's carrying 2 mortgages, one for your apartment in Brooklyn, which I assume you know about, another for the house in Bryn Mawr. He has 2 car payments, 2 insurance policies. He's essentially running 2 complete households." "How?" I finally asked. "How was this financially possible?" His consulting income is substantial, much more than you probably realize. He's been very careful about keeping finances separate. I'm guessing he handles all the household bills for both residences himself. I nodded slowly. Marcus had always insisted on managing our finances, said he enjoyed it, that it was one way he could contribute since I earned more than he did. I thought it was sweet, considerate. It was calculated.
"What do you want to do with this information?" Frank asked carefully. I looked down at the documents spread across the table: birth certificates, property deeds, custody agreements, photographs Frank had included. Marcus standing on a porch with a woman and two young girls, Marcus at a soccer game, Marcus at a birthday party, a little girl with dark curls sitting on his lap, blowing out candles. My husband, my Marcus, living a complete life I knew nothing about. "I need more information," I said, my lawyer brain finally kicking in. "I need everything. Every document, every photograph, every financial record. Can you do that?" Frank nodded. "I can have a comprehensive report within a week." "Do it. And Frank, no one knows about this. Not yet." That night, I went home to our apartment in Brooklyn. Marcus was there, cooking dinner, listening to a podcast about technology trends. He smiled when I walked in, asked about my day, kissed my cheek. I smiled back, asked about his day, kissed him in return. And inside, I was already planning his destruction. Over the next week, Frank compiled what can only be described as a complete dossier on my husband's double life. It was 47 pages long, meticulously documented, damning in its thoroughness. Marcus had met Jennifer Hartley in 2010 at a consulting conference in Philadelphia. She was a graphic designer for a marketing agency. They'd started an affair, and by late 2011, she was pregnant. Instead of leaving me, Marcus had convinced Jennifer that he was in the process of divorcing me, that we were separated but still living together for financial reasons, that he was waiting for the right time to make it official. He told me I was cold, career-obsessed, that we hadn't been intimate in years, that our marriage was essentially over except on paper. Jennifer had believed him. When Emma was born in 2012, Marcus had convinced her to give the baby his last name, promising they'd get married soon. When that didn't happen and Sophia came along in 2015, Jennifer finally got suspicious. That's when Marcus admitted he was still married to me. But by then, Jennifer was in love with him. They had 2 children together. He promised her he'd leave me eventually, that he just needed time to do it right. For 8 years, Jennifer had waited. She'd settled for being his Philadelphia family, settling for his visits every other week, for holidays divided between 2 homes, for explaining to her daughters why Daddy couldn't be there all the time. The most devastating detail in Frank's report was a series of text messages he'd recovered through a contact in Philadelphia, messages between Marcus and Jennifer from just 2 months ago. Jennifer: "The girls are asking again when you're going to live with us full-time. Emma's friend asked why her daddy doesn't live with them. What am I supposed to tell her?" Marcus: "Soon, babe, I promise. I'm working on it. Victoria's up for a huge promotion at work. Once that settles, I'll tell her. I just don't want to disrupt her career at such a critical moment." Jennifer: "You said that last year and the year before. Marcus, I love you, but I can't keep doing this. Our daughters deserve to have their father here full-time." Marcus: "I know, you're right. This summer, I'll do it this summer, I promise." This summer. He was planning to leave me this summer. I sat in my home office reading these messages over and over. 15 years. 15 years of marriage, and he was planning to leave me for a woman I'd never heard of, for children I didn't know existed. Most people, when they discover this kind of betrayal, they confront immediately. They scream, cry, throw things. They want answers, apologies, explanations. But I'm not most people. I'm a corporate lawyer who specializes in destroying my opponents in the most legally ruthless ways possible. And Marcus Wellington had just become my most important case. I spent the next 3 weeks conducting the most thorough investigation of my life. I hired 2 additional private investigators. I brought in a forensic accountant. I consulted with a family law specialist, all under the guise of working on my merger case. Marcus suspected nothing. He continued his routine, traveling to Philadelphia every other week, calling me from his hotel room, sending me sweet text messages about how much he missed me. I played along. I was warm, loving, supportive. Every morning I made coffee exactly how he liked it. Every evening I asked about his day. I even suggested we finally start trying for children, just to see his reaction. He'd paled slightly, then recovered. "Let's wait until after your big case settles," he'd said. "I want to be fully present when we start that chapter." Liar. He didn't want to add a 3rd child to his already impossible juggling act. The forensic accountant I hired was a genius named Patricia Chen. Within 2 weeks, she'd mapped out Marcus's entire financial structure, and it was far more complex than I had imagined. Marcus earned approximately $280,000 annually from his consulting work. Our household expenses in Brooklyn ran about $60,000 per year, including our mortgage. I'd always assumed that left plenty of surplus for savings and investments. Instead, Patricia discovered that Marcus was funneling an additional $90,000 per year to maintain his Philadelphia household, the mortgage on the Bryn Mawr house, private school tuition for Emma and Sophia, Jennifer's car payment, utilities, groceries, activities for the girls, everything. He'd opened credit cards in his name only, running balances to cover shortfalls. He had a separate bank account I didn't know about where Jennifer deposited her own income and he deposited his Philadelphia money. But here's where Marcus made his critical mistake. Under Pennsylvania law, because he'd filed that joint custody agreement and been making documented child support payments through the court system, there was an official record of his financial obligations to Jennifer and their children. Which means when our divorce proceedings began, those obligations would be considered alongside his obligations to me. I also discovered something that made my blood run cold. Marcus had taken out a life insurance policy, listing Jennifer and their daughters as beneficiaries. If something happened to him, I would get nothing. The woman he'd cheated with for 13 years would get everything. My family law specialist, a brilliant attorney named Richard Kaplan, explained my legal position. In New York, we're an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means marital assets are divided fairly, but not necessarily 50-50. Given that Marcus has been systematically diverting marital funds to support his other family, you have grounds for a very favorable settlement. How favorable? He leaned back. Potentially everything. The apartment is in both your names, but you can demonstrate that he's been misappropriating marital assets. You can claim a portion of his future earnings based on lifestyle establishment. And because he's committing what amounts to fraud, lying about his expenses, hiding income and obligations, a judge will not look kindly on him. What about the children, Emma and Sophia? He leaned back. That's where this gets complicated. Those children exist. They have legal rights to their father's support. But the way Marcus has handled this, hiding them from you, lying about his financial obligations, that shows a pattern of deception that will work in your favor in divorce proceedings. Can I go for full financial compensation? I want to make sure that when this is over, every penny he stole from our marriage, every dollar he spent on his double life comes back to me.
The survivor storyteller. Richard smiled slightly. Victoria, I think we can do better than that. While Richard began drawing up divorce papers, I launched the second phase of my investigation, documenting everything. I hired a photographer to follow Marcus in Philadelphia. I got pictures of him picking up the girls from school, pictures of him at Jennifer's house, playing in the backyard with his daughters, pictures of him at family dinners, birthday parties, soccer games. I collected every receipt, every credit card statement, every bank transfer. I built a timeline of every trip, every lie, every moment he told me he was at a work conference when he was actually at a children's dance recital.
And then I did something that might seem cruel, but I needed the truth. I needed to know if Jennifer knew he was still married, or if he'd lied to her too. I flew to Philadelphia on a Friday afternoon. Marcus thought I was in Boston for a deposition. I rented a car, drove to Bryn Mawr, and waited until Marcus left the house. He kissed Jennifer goodbye, got in his car, and drove away, presumably heading to his hotel to call me later. I waited 10 minutes, then walked up to the front door and knocked. Jennifer answered. She was pretty, younger than me by about 5 years, with the kind of warm, open face that suggested she trusted easily. "Jennifer Hartley?" I asked. "Yes." "My name is Victoria Morrison. I'm Marcus Wellington's wife." The color drained from her face. "His what?" "His wife. We've been married for 15 years. We live in Brooklyn, and until 3 weeks ago, I had no idea you or your daughters existed." Jennifer stumbled backward. I could see 2 young girls playing in the living room behind her, Emma and Sophia, my husband's daughters. That's impossible," Jennifer whispered. "He said you were divorced. He said—" "He lied. To both of us." I pulled out my phone, showed her photos of our wedding, photos of Marcus and me from recent months, dated, time-stamped, irrefutable. Jennifer's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! Oh my God! He told me you were separated. He said the divorce was being finalized. He's been saying that for years." "I know. I've read your messages." Her eyes went wide. "How did you—" "I'm a corporate lawyer, Jennifer. When I investigate someone, I'm very thorough." I softened my tone. "I'm not here to hurt you or your daughters. I'm here because I need the truth, and I think you deserve to know it too. May I come in?" We sat in Jennifer's living room for 2 hours. Her daughters played upstairs, unaware that their world was about to implode. Jennifer told me everything. How Marcus had swept her off her feet in 2010, how charming he'd been, how attentive, how he painted me as a cold, career-obsessed woman who'd fallen out of love with him years ago. "He said you didn't want children," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "That's why your marriage was over, that you'd chosen your career over family." "I wanted children," I said quietly. "We'd discussed it. I was planning to start trying this year. He knew that." Jennifer buried her face in her hands. "I've wasted 13 years of my life on a man who was lying to me the entire time." We both did. Before I left, I made Jennifer an offer. "I'm divorcing Marcus. It's going to be brutal, and it's going to be public. When it's over, he'll have very little left. But if you're willing to testify about his deception, about the promises he made to you, about how he's been misrepresenting his financial obligations to both of us, I can make sure you and your daughters are protected." "What do you mean, protected?" "I mean, I'll make sure his child support obligations to Emma and Sophia are enforced. I'll make sure he can't hide money or assets. I'll make sure that when this is over, you have legal and financial security for your daughters." Jennifer looked at me with something like hope. "Why would you help me?" "Because you're not my enemy. He is. And because those little girls upstairs deserve a father who takes responsibility for them, even if he's a lying bastard." Jennifer agreed to cooperate fully with my attorney. I timed the confrontation perfectly. Marcus had just returned from another business trip to Philadelphia. It was a Sunday evening in May, exactly 1 month after Frank had first shown me those documents. I'd prepared everything. The divorce papers were ready. My attorney was on standby. I'd already moved my personal valuables to a secure location. I'd changed the locks on our apartment, though Marcus didn't know that yet. He walked in carrying his weekend bag, smiling, already launching into a story about his client meetings. "Marcus," I interrupted, "sit down." Something in my voice made him stop. "Is everything okay?" "Sit down." He sat on the couch, confused, maybe starting to feel a flicker of concern. I placed a folder on the coffee table in front of him. Open it. He did. I watched his face as he saw the first document, the property deed for the Bryn Mawr house, then Emma's birth certificate, then Sophia's, then the photographs. All the color drained from his face. His hands started shaking. Victoria, I can explain. Don't. My voice was ice. Don't you dare insult me further by trying to explain this. It's complicated. 15 years, Marcus. 15 years you've been lying to my face. 15 years you've had an entire family I knew nothing about. 13 years you've been promising Jennifer you'd leave me. So let me make this simple for you. I'm not giving you the chance to leave me. I'm destroying you first. He looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. I sat down across from him, calm, controlled. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, my attorney will file for divorce. You will be served with papers at your office. The grounds will be adultery, fraud, and misappropriation of marital assets. Every dollar you spent on Jennifer and your daughters over the past 13 years will be calculated as marital funds that you stole. You can't. The girls need. I've already spoken to Jennifer. She's cooperating with my legal team. She'll testify that you lied to her about our marriage, that you promised repeatedly to leave me, that you've been deceiving us both. Her testimony, combined with the financial records my forensic accountant has compiled, will eviscerate you in divorce court. Marcus stood up, started pacing. Victoria, please, I know I've made mistakes, but… Mistakes? Mistakes? I stood too, letting years of suppressed rage finally surface. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is a one-night stand you regret. What you did was build an entire second life. You have 2 daughters who think you're their father. You made me believe we had a future together while planning to leave me for another woman. That's not a mistake. That's sociopathic. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to get caught. There's a difference. I pulled out another folder. This is the property settlement I'm proposing. Our apartment goes to me. Your retirement accounts split in my favor because of the marital funds you misappropriated. I'm claiming 65% of your future consulting income for the next 5 years as restitution for the lifestyle you stole from me. You'll be left with nothing. No, you'll be left with enough to pay child support to Emma and Sophia, which you're legally obligated to do anyway. You'll have enough for a modest apartment and basic living expenses. What you won't have is the ability to maintain 2 households and continue this lie. Marcus sank back on the couch, his head in his hands. I never wanted it to be like this. I loved you. I loved Jennifer. I loved my daughters. I thought I could make everyone happy.
By lying to all of us? By stealing from me to fund your fantasy of being some kind of dual-life superhero? I shook my head. You didn't love any of us, Marcus. You loved yourself. You loved having everything you wanted without consequences. Well, here are your consequences. I placed the final document in front of him. Sign the divorce papers. Agree to my settlement terms, or I will drag this through court for years. I will depose Jennifer. I will put your daughters' names in legal documents. I will make sure every single person in your professional network knows exactly what kind of man you are. I will make your life a living hell. You'd hurt innocent children to get revenge? I'm protecting those children by making sure you can't hide from your obligations to them anymore. Everything I'm doing ensures Emma and Sophia get the support they deserve. You're the one who hurt them by lying to their mother for 13 years. Marcus looked at the papers for a long time. Then he picked up a pen. Where do I sign? The divorce was finalized 6 months later, in November 2023. Marcus signed away most of his assets, agreed to my financial terms, and moved into a small apartment in Philadelphia to be closer to Jennifer and the girls. Jennifer and I stayed in contact, not friends exactly, but allied in our mutual determination that Marcus face the full consequences of his actions. She filed her own legal action to increase his child support obligations, which I supported with documentation of his actual income. The house in Bryn Mawr went into foreclosure. Marcus couldn't afford both his child support payments and the mortgage. Jennifer and the girls moved to a smaller rental property. It wasn't ideal, but it was honest. And Jennifer started dating again, too, cautiously. I'm not sure I'll ever fully trust someone again, but I'm learning. The most unexpected outcome came from Emma and Sophia. Jennifer eventually told them the truth about their father, in age-appropriate terms, that he'd been married to someone else, that he'd lied to everyone, that grown-ups sometimes make very bad choices. Last month, Jennifer sent me a message. Emma, now 12 years old, had asked if she could write me a letter. Jennifer asked if I'd be comfortable receiving it. I said yes. The letter arrived last week. It was written in careful, precise handwriting on lined notebook paper. "Dear Victoria," it began, "my mom told me about you and about what my dad did. I'm sorry he hurt you. I'm sorry he lied. I don't really understand why grown-ups do things like that, but my mom says it's important to tell the truth even when it's hard. Thank you for making sure my dad takes care of me and my sister. I know you didn't have to do that. Maybe someday when I'm older we could meet. I'd like to know you. You sound really strong and smart. Love, Emma." I cried when I read that letter. Not tears of sadness or rage, but something more complicated. Relief, maybe? Or recognition that despite everything Marcus had done, something good had come from the wreckage. I wrote Emma back. I told her she was very brave and very kind. I told her that none of what happened was her fault or her sister's fault. I told her that yes, someday when she was ready, I'd like to meet her too. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from Marcus's betrayal. Some scars are permanent, but I learned something valuable through this nightmare. I am stronger than I ever knew. I am capable of facing the worst truth and surviving it. And I am capable of choosing mercy even toward people connected to the person who hurt me most. Marcus, by the way, is still paying his settlement obligations every month, like clockwork. His consulting business has suffered, his reputation damaged by the divorce proceedings. He sees Emma and Sophia now every other weekend, supervised visits, because Jennifer doesn't trust him alone with them for extended periods. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he tried dating someone new last year. It didn't work out. Apparently, once she learned about his history, she ran. Funny how that works. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things, if I should have just walked away with my dignity intact instead of dismantling his life so thoroughly. My answer is always the same. I didn't dismantle his life. I held him accountable for his choices. There's a difference. Marcus built a house of lies over 15 years. I simply made sure he was standing inside when it collapsed. And for those of you watching this story, wondering what you'd do in my position, here's what I learned. Betrayal reveals character. Not the character of the person who betrayed you, but your own character. How you respond to that betrayal defines who you are more than the betrayal itself. I could have screamed and cried and begged for answers. Instead, I investigated. I planned. I executed. I protected the innocent people caught in the crossfire, and I made sure the man who thought he could fool me learned exactly who he'd been underestimating. I'm Victoria Morrison. I'm 42 years old. I'm a senior partner at a Manhattan law firm. I'm a woman who discovered her husband's secret family and refused to be a victim. And if you've stayed with me this entire story, if you've felt every emotion alongside me, then please do me a favor, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, share this video to someone who needs to hear that they can survive betrayal too. Because these stories matter, your stories matter, and we all deserve to know that we're not alone in our pain, and that there's power in choosing how we rebuild. Thank you for listening, thank you for being here, and remember, the truth will always come out. It's just a question of whether you're ready to face it.